Facebook famously determined that if a new member invited 10 friends within 14 days, they were hooked for life. So they focused religiously on driving the user experience to this key metric. If you apply this product-based approach to B2B sales, then you can identify those users that are ready to talk. And this method is known as the Product Qualified Lead, or PQL. So if you sell in a freemium, open source, or trial model, then the PQL method is critical to give your sales team visibility into who is ready to talk. So talk to your data team, or better yet, partner with Whaler's team of data scientists to develop a PQL model tailored specifically for your business. You'll be empowered by knowing exactly when a user is ready to convert. To see specific examples, go to getwhaler.com/Andy. That's GETWHALR.com/Andy. And as a bonus, if you sign up to learn more about Whaler and PQLs, then Whaler will send you their optimized 2-page master services contract that you can leverage for your own business free of charge. It's time to accelerate. Hi, this is Andy. Welcome to another edition of Frontline Friday with my regular and very special guest, Bridget Gleason. Now, before we get to the show, Bridget and I have a favor to ask of you. We'd really appreciate it if you took time right now to leave a review for this show on iTunes. And while you're there, click the button, subscribe to Accelerate. Make sure you get Frontline Friday automatically each week. Also, we need to hear from you. More specifically, we need your sales questions. I mean, what can we answer for you? What challenges do you have that we can help you with? So go to accelerate.fm/frontline and enter your question there. Each month, we're going to select one listener's question to be the question of the month. And the winner will receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So remember, go to accelerate.fm/frontline to give us your question and maybe win $50. So Bridget, how are you today?
Andy Paul, I'm doing great.
You're so formal today.
I'm doing great.
So
yes,
formal.
Bridget Gleason, Andy Paul. I know. I like to throw that in there and throw you off periodically.
Well, that was... Yeah, usually.
Did I throw you off?
No, but it evoked memories of my mother.
Oh, dear. Okay, then I need to stop doing that.
When the first and last name both came out, that was usually not a good...
That's right. Okay, that's a good point.
Not a good sign.
Good point.
So, but, I don't confuse you with my mother. So, that's good.
Okay, thank God. All right.
Well, yeah, she was nice. Bright red hair, though. You don't have the bright red hair.
I definitely don't have the bright red hair.
Yeah. Yeah. She was, in a different generation, she probably would have been great in sales. I mean, she
really?
Was, oh yeah, she was tough. I mean, she was a really smart person in the family. I mean, it was like, yeah, she was sort of post-war generation, World War II generation, sort of stay-at-home mom. But you never found her without a book in her hands.
I love that about her.
Yeah. I mean, she was the reader. She read constantly. And, it's not, for the most part, fiction, but, she read, the popular fiction of the day. But kept abreast of what's happening in the news and so on. But she was, always reading, constantly reading.
God, both of my parents were the same way. My father's passed away, but my mother is still the same way. Just constant readers. And I will have to say that the apple doesn't fall too far from that tree. I am often accused by my sons that I've always got my nose in a book or a Kindle as it would be today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, me too. Yeah. It's almost never a book, but it is on my iPad. Yeah. So I just think, and I'm sure we've talked about this, but I mean, what a luxury these days to be able to travel with all your books on a single device, as opposed to the days when I was traveling internationally on business and I'd be leaving on, a 2-week trip to Asia or, someplace else, some exotic location as I was tending to go, is like, how many paperbacks can I fit into my briefcase? Because, I could go through 2 on a 12-hour flight, and because, my battery on my laptop would drain pretty quickly, and then what are you going to do?
I am exactly the same way. I remember going on these long trips. I would go maybe on vacation, and I would go for 2-3 weeks at a time. And that was a lot of books that I would bring. minimum 5, 6, 7 books. I always had a bag of just books. So to be able to have my little lightweight Kindle, I'm such a fan. I'm so grateful.
I mean, even back then, I could never understand people who'd get on overseas flights and with nothing. And they would just sit there. And it's like, that's what you're going to do for the next 12 hours? I mean,
I know. But you know what? I read something about that.
Maybe they're figuring out,
I
in their
read
mind,
something
they're figuring
about
out
that one, Sandy.
calculations. Yeah.
Actually, I think that's harder, to just have the quiet mind and use that as just the quiet mind for that long. It's like an extended meditation. I think it's really impressive. I couldn't do it, but I don't think it's so much as just being wasted idle time. I'll have to dig up where I read something about that, about somebody that intentionally used long overseas flights as a time to just quiet the mind. I think it's hard.
Well, yeah.
So I have a different perspective. Now.
Yeah. I don't think, I don't mind some introspection. I'm not sure I want to be alone with myself quite that long.
Yeah, but would you like to do like a week-long silent retreat? Apparently not.
Yeah, I don't think so. Would you?
Oh, I sometimes think about it like it would be really good for me, but no, I can't meditate now. So I don't know. My very good friend at one point, when I said, we should do a silent retreat, she's like, you can't meditate. What do you think about doing a silent retreat?
What do you think it's all about?
Who are you kidding?
Yeah.
So I like to do that occasionally. It's just, deceive myself as best I can.
All right. Well, we'll have to get you signed up. I had a friend who did this, I think, in Japan. Visited a series of monasteries, and at each one there was some, part of the thing was, depending on the specific monastery, is silent time.
I aspire to it.
Okay, what's good?
I aspire.
It's good to have goals.
Aspire. I know. Yeah. I aspire.
All right. So, hey, today.
Yes.
We're gonna.
I can't wait.
Can't wait. Oh, good. Well, we're gonna talk about a question from a listener who submitted, and the question comes from Jason. And Jason says, or asks, he says, what is the single best action you would tell a new entrepreneur to take when selling to a seasoned client base? And he says, for context, he's a business intelligence analyst, and he's selling customized data visualization reports to business clients who are struggling to understand their data. He uses Tableau and a host of other technology to visualize and produce models so the customers can see what story their data is telling them. And Jason says he's new to the entrepreneurship game. Most of his target market is seasoned business people that probably know more than he does in many ways, which, hey, Jason, that's always the case in sales. And however, he says there's a true need for understanding data better, and he believes he can help with his service. So, advice for Jason.
To take some sales classes, I think. And I'm not saying that to be sarcastic or snarky at all. Because I think, like you said, it's not about knowing more than the seasoned prospect who he's talking to, but it's really about understanding, as you know, what are their pains, what are their challenges, what are their aspirations, and helping them. It's a discovery. Is the tool that he's selling something that can be helpful, and how do you guide somebody through that? Guide them through that discussion skillfully. So, but it's not all about just, I've got data, data, let me give you the data. I think if he just tries to spurt out just all the features, functions of what his product can do, he's gonna be frustrated.
Yeah, well, right. So I think we look at it several different levels. One is, he's new to being in business for himself, and so one of the things he needs to do is, segment his market. Who is it that he wants to sell to? Who is this ideal client profile for him? And it sort of plays on this idea of the seasoned client. And I think that Jason, what I would recommend is that those are really the people you want to sell to. Those who are more successful, those who, have that experience. Because it's always been my experience in selling my coaching and consulting services and so on that my most successful engagements have been with the most successful people because they appreciate the value of a different perspective. They appreciate the perspective of having to learn new things that they can apply to their own business. They're more open. It's so to me, one of the hallmarks of all the successful people I've known and worked with in my career is they're constantly learning. And they constantly want to know what else they can learn to help them in their own business. So I think step one is define who it is you're going to be selling to. Is how do you define that in terms of either by business type, business size, but do your research and see, who are those prospective clients that are really knocking it out of the park. And even though it may sound counterintuitive, start there because they're going to be most likely open to buying what you're selling.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Jason, I should say, Jason, as you listen to this, your question, the single best action.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Andy, yours, this idea of segmenting and really having a good understanding of who you're selling to, I think I would agree that that's a really good first action because it's going to be really hard to sell to someone who isn't a good fit for your product or service.
Mm-hmm.
Who's just not naturally a good fit. So that's going to be much, much harder. So having a very clearly identified target customer profile. And I agree, a seasoned client, somebody who already, you're not having to educate them because that's a whole other process and that can take a lot longer. But somebody who already knows and understands what the benefits potentially are of something that you would be offering, I think is a good place to start. Just making sure you understand really clearly. I think a new entrepreneur, it's hard to get that right, like understanding the target customer profile. And I've seen that change for entrepreneurs. So they think it's one thing, and it's only after a series of discovery calls and questions that they identify that actually the target profile is different than they thought.
Yeah, well, I think it's always the challenge for people that are new to, I'm going to call it the consulting business, is to really identify the sweet spot for their services. And it's sort of a little bit of hit or miss. I mean, you can do, discovery work, but I find is that most people don't do enough of that sort of analysis ahead of time when they're hanging up their own shingle. And I just have this bias that oftentimes, as I said, is sort of counterintuitive to a lot of people that are getting into the business. They think they need to help struggling companies, and what you want to really, you can build a better business out of helping companies that are more successful become even more successful.
Yeah, and I guess I was just a little confused on seasoned client.
Yeah, well, I'm short of asking Jason that. I think that I took that to mean, well, I put my own meaning on it, which was
which is what? That's okay.
Experienced, successful. Right? Successful is, and what's the definition of success? Successful is, hey, they're not in trouble, right? They're either business is going well, it's going moderately well. I mean, even people that are very successful in their companies, sometimes the harshest critics, right? They see the opportunities to do even better, and that's what makes them good prospects. I think another avenue that sort of occurred to me as I was going through Jason's question as well, he says it uses Tableau, and it is a pretty easy to use in the relative scheme of things technology to implement. I've had several clients that have used it, but I got to imagine there's a marketplace for Tableau users who, maybe haven't gone through the learning curve yet and really need someone to come in and help set them up in terms of, creating the reports that they need to have on a routine basis, or understand how to create a custom report, and maybe partnering with Tableau. And maybe they have a partner program, I don't know, but where they could refer potential opportunities for you to go in and help some of their clients. That could be an avenue as well.
Yeah, I was at a conference that Insight Squared actually had here, a user conference in Boston a couple of weeks ago. And they had somebody from the Kraft Group, and the Kraft Group or company owns the Patriots. And so somebody from the big data group that looks, I know, don't do that. Because I'm now big Patriots fan.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, here I am. I'm in Boston. Yes. And when I'm in San Francisco,
49er fan.
I know, but when I'm here, I'm a Patriots fan too. It's fun. Gosh, okay, as a segment, it's fun. Boston, we really love our teams. See, it's even we. But I'm fickle. Patriots, 49ers. Anyway, she was talking. She's in their big data
Warriors versus Celtics.
Oh, I feel the same way about both of them. Love them both. I know it's terrible. I should have to pick one, but I'm not.
Really?
I don't believe in the tyranny of war. I don't believe in the tyranny of war.
Okay.
I think I can love more than one. I have two children. I love both of them. Okay, can I get back to my answer?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Anyway, the woman from the Kraft Group, big data, and the Kraft Group now provides as a service these sort of like a Tableau for sports teams to look at the different data and fans that come and merchandise and ticketing and all of this. And to your point here, one of the questions that I had for her was, I mean, I think this is all interesting, but I would imagine that more important than the tool itself is somebody helping ask. You've got to be able to ask the right questions. I don't always know the right questions to ask. And then how do I interpret and look at the data and the answers? So, I mean, I find that in sales, we've got tons of data now. How do I make sure that my sales operations team, my executive team, myself, that we're asking the right questions of the data, and that we are then analyzing the data so that we've got actionable items as a result. So I think your point with this too is a great one, a great place to go and start and to help around the data, because Tableau is an amazing tool, but having somebody who really understands data could be super, super helpful.
Yeah, well, I think that is, part of what Jason was talking about. I think it's, but maybe taking it a different level. He talked about, visualize and produce their models. But yeah, one of the key things that you brought up, which is a huge thing with me, is that, yeah, we have all this data, but we really don't know what it means, right? We've talked about you and I have talked about this before, is, we tend to use data on a somewhat superficial level. We tend to, because our confirmation biases kick in, we tend to use the data to confirm what we already believe to be the case. Whereas data should really be it should be stimulating the questions, as you talked about, right? And so data should tell us what questions to ask. And so I think another avenue for Jason is with clients, especially those that are, have big CRM implementations or have, other technology they're using that generate a ton of data about their business that, if understood properly, would be really valuable business intelligence, is, helping people really understand the questions they should be asking of the data is I think another sort of avenue and way to sort of position what you're doing, because right now for a lot of companies, it's just like, we've got all this data, and are we defaulting to our standard reports, for instance? And a lot of companies do that because this whole idea of interrogating the data and coming up with custom reports that really fit what they do is somewhat intimidating, especially for small mid-sized entities that don't have resources, a ton of resources. Could be a valuable place for Jason to go.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say too, to not be intimidated by your prospect or customer knowing more than you do. And as you said at the beginning of this, that's often the case.
Well, yeah. I mean, as much as I know about my customer's business, I don't know as much as they know, right? I mean, it's just by definition, they're going to know more than I do. So, and that's fine. But because I'm there with the idea of I want to learn. If you're there just saying I'm there to sell, which, I take it from Jason, your question, you're a pretty thoughtful person, is, ask the great questions and shut up and listen. And they're going to steer you toward the solution.
Yeah. And I remember somebody telling me long ago that the person who controls the conversation is the one asking the questions, which makes a lot of sense. And so, as we've been talking about, knowing the questions to ask that are going to help to uncover if this is a good fit is a huge service also that you can provide, even for a seasoned client, is to help them get a better understanding, help them think about their business differently than they've been thinking about it, help them just look at it differently and try to have a different sort of relationship, perhaps, with maybe the data that they've been looking at. I think is a great service.
Yeah, well, to that end, if Jason's been working with, let's say, companies in a specific industry, and through his work has uncovered data that leads to questions that really managers should know the answers to, then asking those questions of prospects that they should know the answer to but don't becomes a great way to start a conversation and to start building a relationship, because you sort of establish your bona fides, your credentials right off the bat, because you've asked a question with has some insights contained in it that they really think they should know, and the fact that you know it, pretty impressive to them.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question, Jason.
Yeah. Come back and ask some more.
That's right.
So Jason, if you have a follow-up, you know how to reach us, and people listening to the show, that we have actually two ways to submit questions. First one is you can go to my website, andypaul.com. On the lower right-hand side of the home page, there's a red button. Click on that button. You can speak your question to us, and we will play that on the air. So just identify yourself and your question, and we'll play that question on the air, and we will answer it. Or alternatively, you can do as Jason did. You can just email it to us, and the best address right now is andy@andypaul.com. And we'll get that and bring that on the air. And as I said, each week we're going to choose one question to answer. And though we may choose more than one in some cases, but the one's going to be the winner as the best question, as Jason says this week. And as a result, the winner gets a half-hour free coaching session from me, which is worth
great.
$250 for a half hour.
That's fantastic.
It's fantastic. So, Jason,
have fun with that, Jason. Be prepared. Have lots of questions. Know what you want to get out of him in advance of that half hour.
Exactly. So, congratulations, Jason, and we'll be in touch about setting up the call. So, all right. I do want to mention about our sponsor. For those of you who are paying attention at the beginning of the show, you know that our Frontline Fridays are brought to us by our friends at Whalar. That's WHALR, no E. And Whalar's platform leverages the product qualified lead methodology, which you really should learn about, because it's help you inform you when prospects are ready to talk based on how they use your product. So if you're offering free demos or trials or so on, Whalar will help you get some real intelligence about when the customer's ready to move forward in the process and buy your product. So you can partner with Whalar's data science team to build a white box behavior model for your specific business. And go to www.getwhalar.com/Andy. That's me. Again, that's getwhalar.com/Andy. And investigate it. So you talked about books earlier, Bridget. Any new books on your list that you've read recently?
Well, I just finished Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Another
Do you
Jocko.
know that one?
No, I don't.
Another Jocko, Navy SEAL. Really, really great book. It's one of the books that my colleague here, the VP of Customer Success, Boaz, gives to everybody on his team. And as the title suggests, this concept of extreme ownership and taking responsibility for just all the way up and down the chain, the things you do In Jocko's case, he's in the military, but also lots of principles for leadership and business. And I think Jocko now does a lot of consulting for Fortune 500 companies on leadership. So I really, really recommend the book. I enjoyed it just a ton. I listened to it on Audible, and Jocko reads it himself with one of his colleagues, Leif Babin. It's a really, really great book.
Okay. Very interesting.
What about you?
Well, yeah, I was just going through my list of those that I've read.
Because you've always got a bunch of them.
Read recently. One that was a fantastic book that I'd read, and I don't think we'd talked about it yet, was a book called Blind Spot. And the subtitle...
Blind Spot, okay.
Blind Spot, Hidden Biases of Good People. And written by, I believe the researchers and authors are both out of Harvard. And I was reading it because they talk about this idea of how our hidden biases affect how we hear and communicate with other people, which obviously is very important in sales. And I've mentioned many times on the show is that the need to be able to ask great questions, then listen without judgment, listen without filters to the answer you get. And gave the example of physicians, for instance. There are I think identified like 22 known biases or filters they have to work through in order to accurately hear and authentically hear what the patients are saying in the examining room. But it's also true in sales. And so what they've done is they've developed this sort of demonstrate their thesis. They developed this very simple test called an implicit assumption test. And you can find these online, or implicit association test, And you can find them online and take them. And they're for a range of topics, but it just shows you that, and the authors talk about this in the book, is they were sort of shocked when they took these tests themselves, that it showed that they had some, minor preferences that were, in essence, sort of biases or filters that they were unaware they had, that they didn't expect that they had. And no matter how egalitarian you might be, we all have these preferences. But the preferences inform how we hear, they inform how we communicate with people. So the book is really does a great job sort of explaining how that all works, and something I think for those of us in sales, and I'm going to be doing some writing about it in the sales context, are really important.
I love it. I'm looking forward to reading it. Sounds great. And I know I have biases.
Well,
I know that.
I mean, and there's degrees, but they all do. But again, the thing that I think is important for us to keep in mind is that it not only it impacts how we hear what people say to us, it impacts how we say things to people, and we're just not conscious of it.
Fascinating. That sounds like a great one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting book. You read another one that's for a new book coming out that was quite interesting. Was it should be released, I think, by the time this episode comes out. If not, it'll be a little bit after it. But called Clicksand.
Clicksand.
And sort of talking about the dangers of so much of the online marketing that's done. And,
I'll bet that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you might think it's sort of a little bit of a rant, but it wasn't really. It was really very well reasoned, very insightful analysis of sort of the ways that let's say the inauthentic behaviors that we adopt, many of us adopt when we're using online marketing, and how it doesn't really square with what's really required to build natural, lasting relationships with customers.
Really interesting. And you said that one's not out yet.
Not out yet, I don't think. The author's name is Bill Troy. But Bill will be a guest here on Accelerate. People can catch my conversation with him. So that one was quite interesting.
I'm trying to think if there's any others that I've read. Nothing that really sticks out. other than that one, I've got to pick it up. I'm reading, just on the fiction standpoint, A Moscow Gentleman. But there are probably things that relate to business and sales in there, but I'm not reading it with that lens.
Okay. So is it espionage fiction, general fiction?
Yeah, it's a general fiction. It's not espionage, but it's sort of post World War I, and somebody that was a gentleman, so of a higher class in Russia. Mm-hmm. Basically, almost like being under house arrest in the Hotel Metropole in Moscow.
Interesting.
And I think the things that's interesting and sort of inspiring about the book is how he continues to adapt to the greater and greater confinement that he has, with a lot of grace and curiosity. And just, even though the walls maybe get smaller where he was allowed to move and how much he was able kind of maneuver in the hotel, his world didn't get smaller. And so it's a good story. I'm not done with it yet, but it's a good story.
All right. Well, one we'll talk about in a future episode, because I'm just in the midst of reading it. And when I tell people I'm reading it, that's always sort of like, what? And a book by an author named Paul Bloom. And the name of the book is Against Empathy, The Case for Rational Compassion. And yeah, it's so far what I've read through it is, analysis of two primary forms of empathy, and why one of them in particular is actually, he considers destructive and leads to bad decisions, and the other that's one that we should practice, and perhaps how we could replace the destructive one with what he calls rational compassion. So, but yeah, sales, we're always talking about, we need to have empathy for our customers, which is true, but what type of empathy do we need to have? And this is so far an interesting book. So I'll report on that when I finish it.
I am looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bridget, we've run out of
Andy,
time, and I know you need to run off.
I've got, as I often do, just things kind of lined up. So wonderful to talk to you, as always.
As always. And friends, thank you for spending this time with us today. And come back, make sure to join us next Friday. Another great episode. We'll hopefully have more questions. And we've also got some special guests going to join us in the weeks coming up. So people should make sure to come back and catch that. So, Bridget, till next time.
Until next time, have a great one.
All right, bye.